So it seems like NIO is really going very big in Europe, and this video will be in many ways actually around my Patreon community, because I'm gonna put a couple of puzzle pieces together that actually have come from individuals, contributors in the Patreon community, where we are talking about what's going on with NIO and also Chinese stocks. And yes, you have guessed it, it is about the potential of a NIO factory in Europe, for which I made a post during the trading of Friday. I didn't make a video back then because, well, frankly, I posted that this is at this point of time, well, just a speculation. So there was a job posting that I found later on through a lot of Googling. So I managed to make some screenshots around it. But at this point of time, the job application was already down. And also, if you just look on LinkedIn, you wouldn't find it through the search anymore. But with a little bit of research and digging, it is still possible to go straight to this website where this job application is still online for a EU plant operation manager in Poland, and that's close to the Warsaw area actually. And so the responsibilities are to establish a EU plant to make sure facilities layout and capabilities are well designed and installed, and basically being responsible for all of the processes going on. Now at this point in time, still take it for what it is. This is just a job description here, which is an indicator that things may happen, but I would say this is still highly speculative to whether or not NIO is actually really planning to open a plant here in Poland. However, I would say this makes a lot of sense, and actually just the other day we also discussed in the Patreon community whether or not there may actually be plants in Europe that have idle resources. For example, here a plant in the Netherlands that is also contracted with BMW and Canoe to build cars for them, but also has still empty capacities. And to this discussion thread, I already replied that, well, I do think it is highly likely that NIO would actually also bring their partnership model that they are currently having with JAC in China for producing at the Hefei plant and also NIO Park later on to a similar concept or model actually overseas. The reasons for that are quite simple. So if NIO were to export all of the Chinese produced cars, then they would have to pay import taxes. Currently, they're kind of working around this situation here because if they're importing to Norway, that means they can actually import the cars without having to pay those taxes, because Norway is kind of exempt from that. But if NIO, and they have announced to open up other countries in Europe, so if NIO were to sell in Sweden, where we now have actually some news around that the Vice President Jing Li-hong actually said that they're going to start sales in Sweden next year. Plus we got various sources telling us that NIO is also entering Germany from next year on, and then of course this becomes very relevant. So at least for the scaling part where many cars are being sold at this point in time, you want actually to have more localized production, at least to stay competitive with those that are actually also producing already in Germany or in the EU. And so I think Poland would be quite an interesting choice there, because of course the labor force is well educated, but still cheaper than, for example, in Germany. At the same time, it's just a couple of hours away from Germany, so from the Gigafactory in Berlin, for example, so that's only 3 to 4 hours. And then also, of course, it's part of the European Union, so you have, once you are in the market, you can sell to all of the other countries without having to ship the cars from China and having this tax issue. And so this actually, with all of those news around Sweden, Germany, plus this speculation now about Poland, tells me that NIO is really planning quite big for Europe. And this actually also fits well together with another news of the last week, and about which I actually haven't talked yet, which is Shell and NIO are going to collaborate to improve the charging experience for EV drivers. So NIO and Shell have held a ceremony and starting to collaborate for building swap stations, co-branded swap stations actually, both in China, as well as in the future also in Europe, as well as NIO having the benefits of accessing the charging stations of Shell. And I think actually that this news should actually be more about Europe than even China, because a couple of weeks ago I also made a Patreon-only video talking about that I know that NIO is searching for a partner in Europe for battery swap stations and a charging infrastructure. And the fact that this only now took a couple of weeks until they finally announced and closed this deal and now have a strategic partner there on the charging infrastructure side on Europe, which actually also helps with the branding and the awareness, tells me, first of all, that NIO is executing on what they're trying to do, and actually successfully so. And second of all, well, that they seem to have quite a bit of strategic focus right now on Europe, with all of the market entries that they're planning in Europe, the potential of this factory, and also the charging infrastructure side. So this could really fit well in this timely window of opportunity where most of the legacy automakers are still making the shift basically right now from internal combustion engine to EVs, and so have lots of development projects going on that may not be on the road till 2024, 2025. At the same time, even Giga Berlin hasn't started production yet. And so what for this potential of a EU factory in Poland comes to my mind for NIO is that I think it's unlikely that they would actually build up their own factory and start it from scratch, similar with the NIO Park, what they're doing. I think they would rather go and see to find this partnership model as well working in the EU. And I've just done some very quick research here about what's going on in the EV space in Poland and who's doing what, and I found one interesting thing here, which is that Poland has chosen the southern industrial region of Silesia as the site of an electric vehicle factory. It hopes it will boost its auto sector, but state-owned Electric Mobility Poland said that the production would start later than planned. And that was posted in December 2020, so 1 year ago. And what is interesting here is that also they are mentioning here to lessen the risk, EMP said that they will license the vehicle platform from a foreign partner, but has yet to say which this will be. So while this is such kind of an EV project in the Warsaw area, I would say it's premature to say that this is exactly where NIO will collaborate. And well, first of all, the NIO plant is speculation, and second of all, I have no idea whether or not this is the only plant in the Warsaw area. But what this kind of tells us is that the situation in Poland seems to be quite favorable for a project like a NIO collaboration here, because NIO could be such kind of a foreign player coming in. They could bring their know-how, they could even bring in the tooling. They know how to build advanced factories like NIO Park with production processes that are sustainable, that are very efficient, possibly know-how that Poland currently doesn't have in the EV area, and then license also their 2.0 platform and building cars like the ET5, ET7 possibly in Poland. That would be a way of, helping those existing factories on the ground to build up capacity and also get the know-how from overseas. In that case, in this partnership model again, which would help NIO to scale fast, because they wouldn't have to build the factory, they wouldn't have to have lots of financial investment taken place or locked up there. And so this, I think, would be a win-win situation, and in my point of view actually is quite likely there, with having the right partners in place, then with the factory, Shell on the infrastructure side. And then also what we see here, that NIO is quite active in lobbying with some of those interest groups like Innovation Norway here, the Norwegian consulate. I also talked about how they are active in various governmental and industry alliances spheres in Europe, in Germany, for example. And so these are all just tiny puzzle pieces that we are talking about here in our Patreon community there that I'm piecing together. And the bottom line is actually that it seems like NIO is not only selling a couple of hundred cars there in Norway, but seems to have a bigger plan for Europe there, and frankly may actually be quicker on the timeline there than we possibly think about. So let's see what they're gonna announce also with NIO Day around those plans of globalization, or in the next earnings calls. Definitely, I would say the right development there, and also quite exciting as a NIO investor, because this is still so early about what this all means. I mean, just imagine they're having the current plant with now 300k factory capacity, then NIO Park an additional up to 1 million capacity, and then they're going to do this partnership model possibly in the EU. I would say at least another 200k in capacity there, but then maybe multiple of these kind of projects, and maybe even going to the US later on in a similar model. This is actually quite big, and a little bit bigger actually than I originally had hoped or anticipated regarding the global side of the NIO business there. And so, well, let me know down in the comments whether or not you think that NIO is kind of overdoing things here, or whether or not you think that this speculation will ultimately turn out to be not true, and NIO rather gonna build the cars in China and send them overseas elsewhere. Well, I'm interested to hear your thoughts, and then thank you guys for watching, and see you in the next one.